Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to this glistening creation of loveliness, Fezzari's entry into the youth bike market, the Lone Peak 24.
Hi everybody. I realized this morning that there's a lot of videos up with River riding this bike and we've never done a review. So I think it's a great opportunity, since we're just past the 1 year mark with this bike, to do a long-term review and hopefully help some families out that are out there trying to decide on a 24-inch bike. We just passed a year with this bike and we've got 800 logged miles. And then River, naturally, between riding with her friends, or we have a little trail system at the house, or shadowing a team, or a camp, naturally she's not tracked. So safe to say we're somewhere between 800 and 1,000 miles. So River was 7 when we bought this bike and is 8 now. And it has just treated us really well. I think Fezzari really focused on the build on this bike being specific for a certain age group, and our experience has just been phenomenal with the bike. So terrible at the whole remembering things. So River's height and weight, I'll put it in the video later. When she started, was a really big factor for us. River was on a 20-inch Cannondale bike and just not progressing for a couple different reasons, as far as just her size, the components, a few things. But we knew that it was time for her to graduate to probably, her first serious bike. It was important to us to put River on a bike that she could progress and learn new skills and not be held back by the build quality or the design of the bike. And that started our search. So most importantly to us from the get-go was that River had a confidence going, and a lot of the confidence was on the smaller bike. She felt stable. She was able to place her feet on the ground and still have a good standover. So that was where our search began, with standover heights. And where she was at the 7 to 8 range, and this is dependent on heights, but I would say River was average, maybe a little tiny bit above average in height. We wanted her to be able to not be concerned about starting and stopping. And if you're a parent with a young child on a mountain bike, or any other bike for that matter, you know that that's just a really big issue. There's a lot of starting and stopping going on the trail. You know what I mean? Maybe at every obstacle, at every incline, there's a lot of we're going through a learning curve here, and we just wanted her to be super confident. When Fezzari designed this bike and the frame shape, they seemed very focused on standover height, which is really critical at that transitioning time between, a smaller bike and your first entry into mountain biking. Next thing we were focused on when we were looking for a bike for River was the group set, and the fact that Fezzari went with a Scram SX Eagle 12-speed really just set the bike apart from a lot of other brands. And then River was coming off a twist shift and just not able to function very well with it at all. Some parents out there might have different experiences with their kids, but our experience with a twist shifter was horrible. And everyone that we know that had a child on it had the same experience, and most of them actually switched out to trigger shifters from that, just because their child just wasn't able to ride in an off-road setting and just functionally shift through gears well, if at all. Fezzari also didn't skimp on the drivetrain as far as it's a SRAM cranks, SRAM bottom bracket, SRAM chainring, cassette, and I mean, we're almost at 1,000 miles in, and we've had zero issues. I mean, zero. The only other concern we had when we first started out and the bike arrived was that the rear derailleur, when you're in your lowest gear, uh, you have maybe 2.5 inches of clearance from the ground, which we thought was going to be just a huge issue. We're in the Northeast. Everything is really rocky, rooted up, and we started off literally riding around with an extra hanger, just thinking like, oh gosh, how long is this going to last? And uh, call it luck, call it whatever you want. Here we are, a year later, probably 200 or 300 miles of single track and mountain biking, and it's still there. So wasn't an issue for us. Moving on to the fork, Fezzari put Suntour XCR Air on this bike, and it's treated us well. It has the reverse, the negative spring in it, so it's designed in theory for a lighter rider. And even River starting out last year at somewhere in the 50-pound range, we're still able to dial this in that it functioned for River. It made a difference. It allowed her to ride a little bit more aggressively through sections. So it's a little on the heavy side, which is more difficult for a 7-year-old, or maybe even a 6 going into 7-year-old. However, I will say that it works as it's designed, and it put her on track to progress. And then now a year later, I think it was a good addition to the bike. As far as forks go on kids' bikes, it's a great subject, and you're going to see a lot of different forks if you're shopping for a kid's bike. A lot of companies, even major brands, are putting adult forks or forks that aren't made to function with lightweight riders on their bikes. It's just puts you in a position where your child is just lugging around extra weight on the front of the bike. Other companies, also some major brands out there, are putting spring forks on kids' bikes. No air, no design component that takes in effect that you could have a 50, 60, 70-pound rider. These forks are not functioning while your child's riding. They just don't have the weight to compress them. So once again, if you're going in that direction, you're almost better off putting them on a rigid front end. There's other companies out there, as far as Trailcraft and some other offerings from shock companies that do an even better job than this fork. However, they come at a different price point. As far as the rest of the bike, the brakes are hydraulic Tektro M275s. Treated us really well. Rivers just had a lot of success with them. I mean, it's just one of those issues where if it's not talked about, it's apparently working. I've never seen her struggle. I don't see her grab more than one finger to do anything she needs to do. You'll see a lot of bikes out there in the lower price range that don't have hydraulic brakes, and maybe that could work out in some parts of the country. We're in the Northeast. We have a lot of steep stuff that we're dealing with all at a time, so that was kind of a must for us to have a hydraulic brake system, and a decent one at that. And that's what Fezzari put on this bike. So super happy with that. Fezzari set the bike up with Stan's arch wheels, which I just think is just really a testament as to what Fezzari was trying to do here. They were trying to build a kid's bike that was spec to a quality adult bike. So naturally, we've had zero issues. As far as the tires, they're the V rubber tires, 2.6. They've treated us well. I mean, we've had, they've held up. They've had a lot of miles on them. The one thing I will say about them, if there was a negative about the bike, I'm not in love with the tires. On the heavy side, for sure, especially for younger, lighter, not so strong riders. And then the other thing is myself and a whole lot of others have had a lot of struggles trying to get them to go tubeless, even though they are a tubeless compatible tire. I mean, the last thing to talk about would probably be geometry of the bike, which is super important when you're talking about a kid's bike and a child being able to ride well and confidently. Fezzari just nailed it with the head angle at 67 degrees. Just as far as that, we could spend a half an hour talking about geometry, but you could easily, if you're thinking another brand or comparing it to this brand, you could easily compare geometry, and then you could really deep dive. And then one of our favorite parts about the bike, and I think Rivers as well, and might not go as far as into, well, it'll come up, I think, when I get into another topic, but is just the finish on the bike. The finish on this bike is, I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, we've owned a bunch of bikes. We now own a bunch of bikes. And this one is just a great looking bike. I mean, the paintwork is just deep and rich, and it's got a great clear coat on it. I mean, it's just held up better than any other bike we have. I mean, this is a kid's bike at almost 1,000 miles, and I mean, it is just like there is like nothing going on. And I mean, this is not a little girl who's like, I mean, it's not hung up on a wall or something. Like, this bike has crashed a gazillion times. Been leaned against all the wrong things, fell over, you name it, like all of it. And it's like we're still looking at just a fantastic looking bike. River, naturally, that's another good thing to bring up. River, as far as I think it's important, maybe for little boys, but especially for little girls, that they could like personalize their bike, which River has done. And I think it just kind of gives them, I mean, River's really proud of her bike. It gives them a sense of pride. It just, it's like an ownership thing. It's like their bedroom or other, or their favorite stuffy or whatever. But, she's changed out the grips and she's put some lever covers on. The pedals, we've switched over to the metal cleats just because she was having a lot of foot slippage issues. Just little, a fender. She's put some decals on, things like that. And it's just really made it her bike. And it also allows, call it healthy, call it whatever you want, but like other people fuss over her bike too. And I think that, every little bit adds to the whole, the whole experience. Like you're at a point now where you want your kids to want to ride further, to be part of things, to be engaged with people around them. And this has just helped her. You know what I mean? It's an extension of who River is. You know what I mean? So when she pulls up to somebody, they give her, a couple minutes of fussing over the bike, and it's like a great icebreaker, and and it's really helped River to become more outgoing. Not that she wasn't enough already, but it's helped in that aspect. So I think it's, it's important to let your kids do that. And it doesn't have to be a major expense. You know what I mean? This isn't an expensive seat. And, you could certainly get colored pedals that aren't, a name brand, and grips are easy enough. So little things, sticker kits, things like that. I think it's just really important, whether a boy or a girl, to let them personalize what they're riding, and she has, and it's really worked out. Um, uh, Maybe that's a good segue into the fact that um, the finish on a bike, and the look of a bike, it's going to go towards your resale when you're done. And this isn't an adult purchase, so you might have other siblings coming up behind, that you could hand down a bike, things like that, as long as you weren't really outpaced by technology and things like that, and components. But a lot of people out there, you're making a purchase that's going to last maybe a year, hopefully two. So that should be weighing on your mind. What is going to be the resale? What is this bike worth when I go to sell it? And with a bike like this, it's going to resell extremely well. At the price point that we got in at, I think you're like somewhere between $900 and $1,000 bike, depending on if Fezzari's running a sale or not a sale, free shipping or not free shipping. However, this bike today on Facebook Marketplace or Pink Bike or something like that, I mean, this is still, you know, a $700 bike. Don't want to wait too long. A $600 bike. So that being said, I totally understand, that this is it's a major investment to invest in your child, for a bike. However, this is kind of like the what we consider to be, and what we found, it's almost the entry level price point. You might be a little bit less, you might be a little bit more depending on brand, but this is kind of where you're at. So that being said, a major upfront investment, a year later, 2 years later, that you chose the right company, the right components. This bike hasn't been outpaced as far as components in the last year. So, then we're not talking about, a $900, $1,000 investment. After resale, we're talking about maybe a $200 or $300 investment for, a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years, and that makes it a lot more palatable, I think, for parents. As far as additions to the bike, other than the basic how River personalized the bike, we added a drop. We ended up working with P&W on this dropper. They were able to, one of their techs was able to set us up with something that was going to work for River's weight, and it has worked really well. We also went with a P&W lever. Currently, I'm pretty sure that they're the lightest actuation lever on the market, and that is really a big deal when you have a young rider with small hands that aren't really powerful. Their tech was able to spec out this dropper for her weight. So as far as that goes, we went a little out of the parameters of what's recommended. So I wouldn't dare make recommendations on that. But if you're certainly looking for a dropper for a young lightweight rider, this has been fantastic. And you could certainly reach out to P&W, and I'm sure they would be happy to steer you in the right direction. Okay, just to wrap things up, sorry if I went a little long. There's just a lot to go over, it seems like, in this video. I didn't think there was until I got started, but it's a difficult choice for a lot of people, and an important one, and an expensive one. So wanted to, hopefully I helped you out. But back to why I came out here this morning was just because we realized that we're probably going to, in the next little bit, switch over to making this bike a 26-inch bike, which would require a new fork. So other than the fork, we have a new wheel set, new tires, and we're gonna probably leave River grow another 1 or 2 inches, and that seems to be, I don't think we won't quite make it through the summer, but Fezzari has given us the ability to also run this as a 26-inch bike. So nothing like stretching out, the amount of time and the value you have built into your bike, that you have the ability for a bike to grow with your child. So we're excited that she's able to stay on the bike that she loves and that she's familiar with for a little bit longer. So we're going to do that build, and I guess we'll do a follow-up video once we do that, and go from there. In all, I'd say that a year later, if you couldn't tell from the rest of the video, we're super happy with what Fezzari has built. It's treated us extremely well. I think it's an amazing value, if not one of the best values in this class. Definitely one of the top contenders. It's brought our daughter from a 7-year-old who was confident and doing really well, and just starting to get into a little bit of rolling single track. A year later, into a young girl who's logged a few 100 miles this year, on a NICA Shadow team, riding with an older, very successful NICA team member who is mentoring her. She's spending, 20, 30 miles a week on her own trail system. Just really allowed her to excel. I think I covered everything. Feel free to ask any questions you could possibly think are important to you, or something that could help you, making an important decision as far as a first or a second bike for your child. Thanks everyone again for watching. Please, if you could, like the video and subscribe. It'll really help us to build the channel, and hope we could give you some more of these videos like this. Until then, I guess we'll see you when we see you.